Secretary of State Antony Blinken said this week that with the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, Israel had accomplished its goals in Gaza of effectively dismantling Hamas and eliminating its leaders. He urged Israel to make a deal to end the war and get the hostages back. But Israel is continuing to wage war in Gaza and in Lebanon against Hezbollah. For more on where this is all headed, I wanted to talk to Rayan Crocker. He was U.S. ambassador to Iraq and Afghanistan while the U.S. was battling insurgencies there. Among his earlier jobs, he served as ambassador to Lebanon. He is now distinguished chair in diplomacy and security at RAND. Welcome, Ambassador. I wanted to ask you about this sort of fundamental question that everyone has, which is what is the objective of the Israeli operation? When would it be possible for Israel to say that it has defeated Hamas, for starters?
The Israeli Prime Minister has set the bar very high, the total defeat of Hamas. But that can be a flexible notion, and I think Secretary Blinken gave the Israelis some good advice to say that they have accomplished their main mission, which was eliminating the senior leadership of Hamas, effectively eliminating its ability to project force into Israel. And this would be a great moment to declare an end to hostilities, because otherwise this is going to grind on indefinitely. I don't see an end to it, other than a declaration by Israel that they have achieved their objectives and it is time to cease hostilities. That is the only way to get the hostages back, by the way.
Because you don't think that Hamas is ever going to, in effect, surrender?
Well, I don't. We've seen these kinds of insurgencies before, Fareed, in Gaza, in the West Bank. I experienced it in Iraq and Afghanistan, certainly in Lebanon. There is not going to be a point at which Hamas runs up the white flag and accepts an unconditional surrender. They will fight on in some form. Some form of militancy is going to be an indefinite part of the landscape, I'm afraid.
What about the death of Yahya Sinwar? Is it a game changer?
Well, clearly it is very important. I would liken it in some ways to the killing of Osama bin Laden by the United States in 2010. It is very important symbolically. I think it's questionable how much operational control he had over the remnants of Hamas at the time he was killed, though. So whatever resistance is left, I don't think is going to be dramatically affected by his passing.
When you look in the north, Ambassador, you were around during the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982. What do you think Israel is doing right, and what is it doing wrong?
Well, clearly the targeted actions against Hezbollah's leadership were highly effective, and I certainly shed no tears for their passing. They have enormous amounts of blood on their hands, including American blood. I was a survivor of the embassy bombing of 1983, and of course, just a few days ago, we marked the 41st anniversary of the Marine barracks bombing. However, Israel would do very well to remember how Hezbollah was created in the first place. Hezbollah did not exist until the Israeli invasion of 1982 and the subsequent military occupation of South Lebanon. That gave birth to Hezbollah, and this current invasion and occupation, for however long it lasts, is not likely to end it. Just on Friday, we saw, I think, 10 Israeli soldiers killed in South Lebanon. That is a much more potent organization. It was born in conflict and in occupation. It certainly is not going to be ended by that same conflict and occupation.
So it sounds like, do you think, Ambassador, that these operations, obviously they have had extraordinarily positive effects from Israel's point of view for Israeli security, eliminating these leaders, destroying the military hardware. But do you think on the ground they are kind of radicalizing another generation of militants in the way that people sometimes talk about?
Well, that is the danger. And Israel, through its occupation in those 18 years from 1982 to 2000, lost some 1,100 Israeli troopers and left as a legacy one of the most potent insurgent groups that the world has ever seen. the radicalization of the population of South Lebanon occurred during that occupation, and the current wave of offensive attacks, which have not exactly been precise in their nature, run the risk of doing exactly the same thing to a new generation of Lebanese. We've seen this movie before. It did not go well, not for Israel, not for the United States. Right now, whether it's Gaza or South Lebanon, I think there is an urgent need for a ceasefire, a cessation of hostilities, and an effort toward a more stable, if not formal peace, at least some quiet and security for both sides of the border.
Ambassador Crocker, thank you for your insights born of deep experience. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Israel announced in the early hours of Saturday morning that their military operation against Iran was over after striking military targets in different parts of the country. The targets, according to Israel's military, included missile manufacturing facilities as well as surface-to-air missile systems. Sources told CNN that there were 3 waves of Israeli airstrikes, and Iranian media said that military sites in 3 different provinces were hit, but they claimed limited damage. The United States had pressured Israel to not strike Iran's nuclear or oil facilities, fearing greater escalation in the region and an impact on the global economy. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appears to have complied. Following Israel's operation, a senior U.S. administration official told reporters that, quote, "This should be the end of this direct exchange of fire between Israel and Iran." The official also said that the strikes were carefully prepared, as well as being extensive, targeted, and precise. Israel strikes were in response to the October 1st Iranian barrage of some 180 ballistic missiles directly fired at Israel. For the past 3 weeks, Israel has been preparing its response in coordination with the United States, though Washington made clear it did not participate in Israel's operation. What comes next remains very much to be seen. What the damage in Iran looks like, whether the Iranian regime retaliates in some way, and what impact this may have on the other fronts in the region, in Lebanon and in Gaza. Alex Marquardt, CNN, Washington.